Welcome back to the Color Money Podcast. Today we got a full crew today. We got Uncle Emerick, we got Julia, we got Bo, we got the whole team here. And what we're going to do with this episode today is we're going to talk about the power of community. So we're just coming off of Mega Camp 2024, where that is a big community event of all of our Keller Williams agents across the country that meet in Austin for a seminar. And through that event, we learn a lot, we grow a lot, we have a lot of meetings, a lot of dinners, lunches with people, and learn from their businesses. And so we're going to use this episode today to talk about some of the takeaways and how the power of community can help you grow personally and professionally. So welcome, y'all. How you guys doing today?
Hey, I love this idea, Daniel.
Hey.
Doing well.
So, Daniel, can I start off with saying more about what the event was that we had at Mega Camp and why we have it and who created it and all of that? I like to pay homage to the pillars in our community who have created such community.
Yeah, absolutely.
So every year at our events, we have the Mega Camp event that happens in Austin. However, next year will be in San Antonio. And then our annual family reunion event that rotates locations. The KW Black Real Estate Network has this get together that you were just talking about, Daniel. And many years ago, and I always get the dates wrong, and Emerick will correct me, but many years ago, Emerick created a group for us to have a separate event, a mastermind at those events so that we had some Black representation and so that we could see each other in very successful roles and areas of life and all of those things. I remember the first one I attended. You say it was 13 years ago, Emerick. Is that correct?
No, not 13. It was 2000. It was 2015. So that's 9 years ago.
It was 9 years ago.
We had 15 events. So
at that event, I remember Bo was doing, I think, the cash flow quadrant, right? Is that what you call it, Bo?
We were doing a wealth building continuum.
Yeah, but you drew.
And we were talking about the cash flow quadrant.
Yes. Okay. And so I remember that specific event, and Emerick and Bo were up there teaching wealth building. And it was the first time I had been exposed to someone or anyone that looked like me that was so successful in the real estate industry. You owned very large franchises that were doing tremendously well. I hadn't seen anything like that. The conversation you were having, I also had never been introduced to the conversation that you were having. And through that one event that was 2 hours, 3 hours long, it sparked a whole desire or aspiration, inspiration in me to be so much more. And so thank you again. I always say it for the both of you for leading that and doing that so that people could see people that look like them being super successful. So we had another one, and that's what Daniel's saying. We're going to recap kind of what happened there, because the power of that for me, I know, has been the same for so many other people who attend these events. They've experienced the same thing through getting together and having a community of people to aspire to be like. That's all I wanted to say, Daniel. Yeah.
Thank you. I guess thank you is in order. I have issues receiving compliments sometimes, but thank you. and thank you.
I think this idea that there's an opportunity to come together, right? First, in Cal Williams, we have the opportunity to come together at Mega Camp, at Family Reunion, when we get to come together and feel the energy of being part of of this very large community. But being able to come together as the KW BREN and have that sense of community with people that look like us, that we are able to build deeper relationships with. And I just know for me, it really struck me this time, just sort of sitting off to the side and seeing Emerick do what he's done for so long, which is bring people together, empower us, and create this welcoming sense of community for us. Seeing Julia, who's taken on this role of pushing us forward and doing it. And then to see the newest market center from Atlanta and their energy and their excitement. It was a long way from when it was just me and Emerick, giving a head nod in the hallway to each other. That was our sense of KW BREN, 15 years ago.
I think the power of that is the just in seeing it, even if we didn't say anything and we just came together collectively, just seeing other people. And like you said, the energy that it brings to see people continue to grow in the space of real estate and wealth building. It is exciting.
And for me, I'm saying this. I think that I know that just our collective energy, our collective power, particularly from us four in this group, and the influence that we have and that we're growing and that we've had grown within our community, i.e. the Black community inside the KW ecosystem and outside of the KW ecosystem. Collectively, I want you guys to wrap your brain around this. Through these events, these BREN events over the past 9 years, there's an excess of 9 to 10,000 people, Black people particularly, that we affect. That's not just talking about the other people and the way that those people look at us and what we have done and what we have poured into them and what we represent to them and the influence that we have within that group is super powerful. And I want to thank you guys for just being a part of this journey, because the beautiful part about all of us, particularly the four of us, is we all have like a different skill set that we bring to this group. And we have a different level of influence, and we have a different level of optics that we bring to this group. And I think that's what really makes this podcast so special. And I'm just going to say this part. When we go into this, I was someplace just obscure. I was in Charlotte at a different event, and somebody walked up to me and said, "Hey, Unc, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Huh?" I said, "You were Keller Williams?" He said, "No, I listened to you guys' podcast, and I think your podcast is great." This was like off the cut. I mean, I'm out there. It made me feel like a celebrity. So if those people outside of the ecosystem are talking about us, look at the influence that we're having inside of the ecosystem. And we can't discount that. And I just love being in this space with you guys. But let's get back to this week's event, because we're talking about that event right there and the power that we have and what we got out of that, the recap of what we got out of this weekend. But I just want you guys to know that you have power. People see you, you have influence, and we have the ability to change our community far beyond what we ever thought.
And I think, Emerick, you get to see the power, right, of collective, of being together in a community, not just in the moment, but over time.
Yes.
And I think that, in some ways, it's cool to be part of this and to be, on this podcast with the three of you, because I think you saw that represented. Like, I think Emerick sort of paved a way a long time ago. What his first foothold that he established provided me a jumping off point to get into Keller Williams. The work that was done, Kimber did in the Social Equity Task Force became something that Julia established off of. Daniel stepped in and was part of this, really kicking off this generation of folks saying out there, I'm going to go out and start a market center and build an organization. And he took all of his success and everything else he'd done, poured that into that. And that now you're seeing is in another sort of wave or generation of folks opening wildly successful market centers. And so it's really cool to see that power of community that we feel in the moment also playing out over the decades.
But it's funny, you jumped around. You skipped over a whole gap, Bo.
I missed a whole bunch of stuff in between. They're like probably 200,000 things that happen in between.
Just think of just in between it, all of the people, all of the team leaders that have come through that, all of the productivity coaches that have come through this, all of the people, all the mega agents that were inspired, just like Julia was talking about, that have been inspired through this. This BREN has been a crazy movement beyond what I thought it was going to be. I was just looking to initially just to say, hey, there's some other people that look like you that might be doing what you want to do. And then when it really started happening, that's huge. That's we can't discount the impact of those things. Again,
it's not just in KW; it's on the national stage, right? And I was saying this the other day. I don't normally talk like
right.
I don't even normally talk like this, but one of the things I'm most proud of is we look up and we look at even just from KWCP, right?
Right.
And from KW BREN, and you look at on the national stage, you look at the 30 under 30s, and you look at the people that look like us who've been a 30 under 30 nationally for National Association of Realtors.
Yes.
And you can go back for the last 5-7 years. Like, we represent in our little community over 50% of all those people of color who've been on that list. And that's pretty impressive. start to
You
think
got
about
me going down a rabbit hole, Bo. But since you said that,
Daniel was trying to say something. Y'all went on a whole reminisce, like the uncle start reminiscing. And
the old folks, we got to live in the past. We got to live in the past. Daniel, take us to the future. Take us to the future.
Just this one thing really quick, Daniel. This is the future and the present because we have BREN, right? There's BRN that has 14,000 people. There's Black Realtors Rock. They have another 9,000 people in their group. There's African American Real Estate Agents that has another 6,000 people. So the impact that we're having, we have a KW impact, but we have an impact outside of KW in 4 different groups that account for more than 20,000 Black agents. That's a different conversation that we're not having here. We're going to go with Daniel. I just want everybody here to know that we impact so many more people than we absolutely know and understand. I know of it's actually 22,000 Black agents in all 4 of those groups. I just want you guys to know that, and thank you guys. So Daniel, let's go to the recap, please.
Well, one thing that's unique because I'm the newest one of you guys to this group, and seeing the power of the relationships and the strength of the relationships with the people that are inside of this group, from an outsider looking in, it's pretty impressive, and it's inspiring knowing that you have each other's backs. And you don't sense that. There's other groups I'm a part of. There's other masterminds I'm a part of. And the loyalty and the love that is shared inside this community is certainly very, very special. Very, very special. Now, when we think about switch gears to talk about some of the takeaways that we had from it, I want to start with what I think is arguably the most important piece, which is the mindset, the energy, the mental health, all of those things. And Julia, you did a panel with Emerick and Mercedes talking about mental health and talking about the strength in it. Like, can you just give us a couple key takeaways that you got from that? And Unc, I'd like to hear your perspective too.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did that panel. It was kind of a repeat. Last month was National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And we had put together a panel of agents who operate in the space of KW Wellness to talk about mental health, which is obviously, as we all know, something that in the Black community hasn't always been talked about, specifically in the environments that we often work in. Many of us are the only Black people in our market center, or you are the only person that looks like you in any certain space. And in just what's going on in politics and in the world today, in your office, in your market center, in real estate transactions, there are a lot of mental health issues that present challenges that prevent us from building wealth. We use 411s and we use goal setting and we use all of these things. But if you are not healthy mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, you're not doing any of that stuff anyways. So it's really important to have the conversation about mental health. So Emerick and Mercedes were on the panel sharing some tips about really how to prevent becoming overstressed. For Black women, it's the number one killer. Heart disease is the number one killer for young Black women. It's not old Black women, it's young Black women. The stresses that we deal with in America in general as Black women and in business as Black women are killing people. And so we had the conversation about the mental health that we need to have to stay strong enough to actually even do a business or to get up in the morning. And Emerick shared a lot of tips about that, and so did Mercedes. And as a result, we're actually going to be having a webinar on the KW Black Real Estate Network in a month or so here and probably will be a series on maintaining mental health so that we're healthy enough to actually be productive.
Yeah, in that space, that was the reason why I started off with it's not normal, the pressure that we're under as Black people. It's not normal. The things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, that's not normal. As I like to say, relatively successful Black man at 59 years old, I should not be having an anxiety, almost go to an anxiety attack just from being pulled over for a speeding ticket. That's not normal. And so those are just things that we go through. But the big deal is that we ignore things. And I've never said this, and I didn't say this in that platform, is that I myself had to find an outlet in that space because no one would ever know, but I was going through some challenges just based on normal business ideas in the early 2000s, like from 2010, probably about 2014, nobody would have ever known it. I was going through my own set of personal challenges. Just mentally, I had to find a mental outlet to calm my nerves or to calm me, to get me to a level place. So I clearly understand, the issues that one can have, i.e. mental challenges that one can have in today's business society or in today's business climate, and we got to get help. We have to seek counseling. We have to get some type of help because what we go through is not normal.
Yeah, I think there's a weird thing that happens like after 30, and then specifically in my life and a lot of people around me after 35, you start seeing yourself and your world a little bit differently. You start talking to some of those demons that you've been pushing down for so long, and things start coming out differently. And I think that a lot of the challenge that we have with mental health is we admit that we have a problem, but we don't look at it from a sense. We look at it from a sense of I don't want to have a problem versus how can I just get balanced? How can I get normal? How can I get to zero or equilibrium to then be able to start growing from there? Because we have these traumas and we have these experiences and these things that have happened over the years that we learn to just get past and move on from. Like to your point, you shouldn't have to have a panic attack if you get pulled over, but we've learned how to handle that and push it aside and keep pushing forward.
And then it pops back up. Right.
Exactly.
And it pops back up. Yeah.
And it pops back up
in different ways now.
You run from it. Yeah. You push through it. I love what you said, Dan, because you push through stuff. You learn to put it out of your head. You learn to handle it and you learn to move forward. And at some point in your life, as we season, you get more at peace with who you are. And
absolutely,
part of that journey means that all the stuff you push down or push past starts to come back up.
Well, I think that's part of the power of community, as we're talking about with these groups, because a separate event that I attended at Mega Camp was Lady Leaders. And at Lady Leaders, I shared that the loss of both of my children, my oldest son, of course, passed away from cancer 5 years ago. And my youngest son now is incarcerated, fighting a case that is potentially a life sentence. And so I had shared that at Lady Leaders. And several of the ladies came up after the fact and said, I just want to talk to you because you still wake up and you do business every day. And some of them had lost their children as well. And just having a sense of community. And I feel like it is different in real estate, having to be able to get up and work because we're entrepreneurs. At a job, you just go, you check in, you can kind of check out mentally at your job, punch the clock, whatever. In real estate, you still have to grind. And being able to grind is different. And so I thought even in that environment, a power of community of someone who's gone through something similar to you, to be able to even just talk to about how do you still get up and sell real estate? How do you still answer all the calls? How do you do these things? And so even in terms of mental health, finding people within your community that have similar experiences, which is really what an affinity group is. It's a group of people who have similar experiences. There's people who are listening who probably don't understand what you all are talking about having a panic attack if the police get behind you. But people who have similar experiences are able to help push each other through business because you experience something differently. And that in itself is powerful to have in a community, to have a collective of people who have done something or have the similar trauma that they can understand and relate to help you say, and then I got up and I did this. And then I still went to my listing appointment. And then I still went to the office and recruited it, and you still do those things, but you need to have somebody who's experienced something you've experienced in your community, in your world.
Yeah. And Daniel said something about normal. Hell, what is normal? Let's be real. What classifies normal?
Yeah.
That's a question for us a lot of times. We don't even know what normal is. Normal for us is extreme adversity for somebody else.
Because to me, my life is normal. For other people, they're like, what? Like, how do you, to me, that's normal. This has always been my life. It's always been like that, And so but for other people, yeah, what does normal look like? And who even is normal anyway?
Who is normal?
I think balanced or equilibrium is probably a better word for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think any of us are normal. I'm certainly
right.
not normal.
Yeah. KW put out a whole video last week that says we are not normal. Isn't that what it said? We are not normal people.
Right. Well, I think the two resources that we talked about on there that I want to reference, maybe we should look at sponsorship. We were talking about sponsors. This might be two companies we want to reach out to, but betterhealth.com and Psychology Today are two resources that you guys can go to. Look at the different profiles of the different therapists. I want to stress that you don't go to therapy because you necessarily have a problem. Go to therapy to heal. And then while you have your problems, you can start working through those as well. But it's a pain point to think like, I'm broken, so I need to go get fixed. And I think the mindset has to change with it, to think of it almost as a maintenance or a way to empower yourself to get better and heal from the trauma of the past, because we all got it. Some do a better job than others on suppressing it and pushing it down.
Yeah. It's really interesting, Daniel. I was the other day having a conversation with my therapist, and this conversation came up, and I kept using the word like I was frustrated. I kept saying I was frustrated. And he said, "Are you frustrated or are you angry? And why do you not want to be angry?" And the comment was, well, anger has a purpose. Like, anger has a purpose. And he's saying the purpose of anger is to identify when elements of your core values or your boundaries are being crossed. And so you're taking anger and you're not using it for what it's for. You're turning it on yourself. And I think in a world where we've got to handle so many things, we tend to turn energy inward versus just identify it for what it is that allows us to move forward. And so one of these questions that I think this community has done so well for me, which I was just going through, like, what are the core things that I want to stand for in the middle of a storm, in the middle of things that move, in the middle of things that are constantly changing, a world that's constantly changing? What do we stand for? What are the values that we espouse? And for me, a huge one of them was contribution. And one of the things I've been thinking about, which I was always wondering, like why we have 6 levels of deacons. Why do we need to have so much celebration? And part of what I've loved about this community is this validation of people's contributions, yet also the opportunity to talk about how oftentimes our contributions are underseen. And when you fundamentally talk about, Emerick says, as in my experience as a relatively successful, I would say a very successful 52-year-old man, worrying about when I get pulled over, part of that is that a world doesn't see your contribution. And so I think that opportunity to identify in a space where a world may not see your contribution, and yet also to have a place where people celebrate that contribution has been a powerful piece for me of this community.
That's good, Bo. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about that, a lot of times the celebration is not seen in places because we don't talk about our celebration. We don't talk about our accomplishments. We're just so used to doing what we have to do a lot of times. And the success comes as a result of doing what we have to do, and doing what we have to do at such a high level, always understanding that we always have to do more just to be recognized the same way. Sometimes I believe it's us internally not really giving ourselves the due of what our accomplishments have been, because we don't even recognize it. We just say, I'm doing what I have to do to get to where I have to go, to be who I have to be, because I know I have to be 2 times better than everybody else in my space just to even get to where I am. And just like I said, I forgot what word I used, moderately successful. If I had to really take a look at it in the realm of just the world, right? And to be honest, I've done some pretty freaking amazing things.
Yes.
But I don't think of it that way. Because, again, sometimes we judge our insides by other people's outside. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And by the same token, it's just the pressure of what we see as what normal is. And normal is not normal to anyone. And I'm going to go off on a quick tangent. I'm going to shut up. But normal, that comes back into the conversation where we start having this DEI conversation and this diversity inclusion conversation. Normal is set by the heterosexual white male, right? And so everything around us happens based on the contributions of a heterosexual white male. And so that's where the decisions are typically made. That's where everything is established as the norm. So when we talk about the norm, we as being Black people, we are not the norm. So we don't consider the norm. And that whole conversation about DEI is really so important because it's just recognizing the differences of other people and recognizing the differences and the contributions and what other people bring to the table other than that of a heterosexual white male, which is considered, quote unquote, the norm. And I know I'm getting deep into this, but yeah.
Well, part of the other part, and going back to the power of community and the power of these groups and what we did at Mega Camp and all of that, was even and mental health. It all ties into when you are in an environment like that where that's the norm. Which then if that's norm, then that would mean that you're abnormal in in their normal environment, and just the feeling of not being included because you're not that. Then where do you find safety? I remember I was at prior to this Mega Camp event. About 2 weeks ago, there was the NARAB conference, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers had a conference, which was great. Shout out to Jay Renee, who was the education person to put all of that on. She was a past guest. If you want to go back and look at her episode she had wrote a book about, my bad girl, I forget, but it was a book. Y'all go back and look at it. But it was, anyways, I was feeling away because I was having to struggle through the norm for a whole week prior to that event, and my energy was gone. It's exhausting to have to put on in your normal world. And I was exhausted. I got to the conference and I told Emerick, I'm in my room. I'm not coming down. I'm tired. And Emerick said, come down and be with your people and get some energy. And I said, no, I'm tired. I'm going to move very slow. I'm done. I'm exhausted of trying to fit in the normal environment of real estate business. And I'm using air quotes for those of you who can't see that. But I did come down, and Unc in all his infinite wisdom was right. About an hour later, guess what? I felt very normal. I felt very like myself. I felt like I was in an environment where you are welcomed, you are celebrated, to Bo's point, where people appreciate your contributions that you've made. And that in of itself is incredibly important, to have that community to re-energize me, to remind me that, wait a minute, you actually are valuable. You actually, right. This is normal, And so I was like, okay, again, you were right. But I think even that, and we talk about the power of community, without that level of just support and being around other people who celebrate that, it's hard to move to the next level. It's hard to just keep going. And so thank you, of course, Emerick, for requiring me to come down and fraternize with our people.
It's a real interesting, try and articulate this, but it's real interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot because, so my father was a philosopher, and when he passed away 5 years ago, he created this institute. And as part of the institute, there's a number of fellows from around the world coming to Worcester, Massachusetts next week for the first inaugural fellowship under this Menkiti Institute. And Menkiti is this Igbo word that, like, Igbo words are very flowery. And so this one word is basically paints the scene of the matriarch of the household, the woman of the household, saying to the men that are sitting around the table, who am I that you exclude me from the discourse? Who am I that I am not part of the conversation? And so this institute's all about bringing different voices in. But one of the things that I'm preparing to do this panel there, one of the things I keep thinking about is the degree to which even our idea of success is defined externally. And it's defined in a very specific Western way. And we are in an industry where we put individuals on stage. We celebrate aggressive capture for oneself, often at the cost of others. And so one of the things I think is really interesting, one of these fellows said to me, it was actually interesting, the good old crazy African wisdom. They said, hey, I was talking about being burnt out. And they said, you're not burnt out. You've been colonized. You're not burnt out. You've been colonized because you are defining success in somebody else's place. And that place, is you think that slowing down is a threat to your freedom, to your liberation. You don't stop because you have to drive and continue to go after something. But you didn't define that. You got someone else's definition of what success is. And you are pursuing that with so much energy that it's another form of control. It's this interesting thought process that just you guys made me think about.
That's deep. Yeah.
That's very deep.
Right.
That's very deep. What else did y'all get?
And so,
Go ahead, Emerick. Last thought on this.
I believe we said a mouthful on this one. Because if we go any further, Daniel, we're going to be in a rabbit hole. I'm telling you now, we're going to be in a rabbit hole. So
I'll help you switch gears, Daniel. I'll help you switch gears because part of the power of that community and getting together is utilizing each other's knowledge and sharing knowledge and resources, right? So even at the party, there was someone introduced me to some guests that they had brought from Mississippi to the party. And they came to the party and I introduced myself to them. And I said, what do you all need in your business? I asked them about their business. They told me what they were doing in their business. I said, what do you think you need? And he said, you know what? I think we need some lead generation strategies. I was like, hold that thought. And I ran over and grabbed Daniel because anytime anybody says lead generation, I don't know anybody else in this business that has a lead generation strategy better than Daniel Dixon. I said, hold that thought. And I came over and I brought Daniel over. And 20 minutes later, he was still over there talking to him. I said, they're all taking selfies together. They're all best friends. And you know what? In that short time, that short connection, that introduction to somebody else in a similar environment, they left there with everything they needed to move their business to the next level just that fast by meeting someone else who had the knowledge that they needed. And so being in again, going back to the power of this community, the power of these events, the power of meeting and coming to Mega Camp Family Reunion is that there's people that have what you need, whether it be a resource or just knowledge. Daniel sit there and just spit game for 15 minutes. And they were like, this is the best event I never paid for because they were guests, right? So they didn't pay. So they were like, this is the best event I never paid for in my life. Yeah.
But that was a story too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In that 15 minutes, they had gotten more value for their business than they did in a year's time, just from meeting somebody who knew something they didn't know.
Here's the crazy part. I met them downstairs in the exhibit hall. Just randomly met them. I don't know. It's not random. I met them in the exhibit hall. I said, so where y'all from? They said, we're not with Keller. I said, really? He said, we guessed. And so we were talking and I immediately gave them 2 tickets to the event and I gave them wristbands on the spot to invite them at no charge to the event, unknowing of anything else that your experience that you would have with them or experience that Daniel would have with them. And it's just that collective energy sometimes that being in that space with us, it's just special because I had no idea who these guys were, not from a can of paint when I invited them. And then they had this experience with you. They had that experience with Daniel. That's the power of this community that we have here.
Let me bring it full circle though. So the gentleman who invited them, I ended up talking to him. He's a general contractor. My wife is getting she's actually taking her test today to become a general contractor so we can lean into some of the flips and stuff that we do a little more. And he had a completely different strategy on how he utilizes a general contractor license. That's a safer way to make even more money, working more with insurance companies. And it completely took our initial thought that we wanted to do and completely pivoted it to add on a whole nother ancillary to our world with very, very limited risk and limited effort that probably wouldn't have come about if Julia didn't say, Daniel, come from a place of contribution and go help these young men talk about lead generation and end up talking to the other guy about general contracting and how this is going to add to our business. And it's all cool.
Well, wait, there's one more element to that, Daniel. So the guy you're talking about, that was the general contractor. I connected him with Marlena in Bo's office because Marlena does development and general contracting, and they connected and have partnered on some deal that they're going to be doing, something they're going to be doing together on some project. And this all happened from a party that was an hour-long party, right? Yeah. That where we came together and the power of community. I think we could even end on this and that. Their friends is how you utilize the power of community, the KW Black Real Estate Network, or any network, particularly any Black network when we're talking about building Black wealth, right? So that full story, everybody connected with everybody and everybody's doing better now. Long story short. Yeah.
I think we take for granted what we have and what you guys have built inside this community, inside of KW, because those young men they're at a boutique brokerage and knew nothing about, like, we're a completely different world compared to what they thought they knew. And so a lot of the people that are out there, we go to these events and we see each other and it's a family reunion for us. And we're saying hi, we're having a good time. But I think we take for granted that there's a lot of other people out there in the industry and outside of the industry that don't have these communities and these connections that are incredibly important for your growth, your heart, your soul, your mind, and eventually your business as well.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I think we could probably close out. This was great, Daniel. A great idea to talk about what we're talking about today. Anything else that you wanted to add or we should talk about?
One final thought, and I'll try and put it crisply. We might not be normal, but we are not alone.
That's good. Yeah.
No, that's good. That's really good.
We might not be normal, but we're not alone. So thank you guys for reminding me of that.
Thank you, Bo.
Yeah, I think that you're definitely not alone. And don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to try to make a blind connection, because you're one relationship away from changing your entire life. With that, we'll wrap up. Thank you guys for an awesome episode. Until next time, friends. See you soon.
See you, everybody.
Take care.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not KWRI and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.